No.
Basically, you know, when a storm gets down there and hits New Orleans, no matter where else it hits New Orleans. That's all it's talking about. You don't get to New Orleans, they don't care.
Well, good this time.
Okay. Make it right. Howdy, Bert.
Hey.
Right now, I'm watching a window. We had a very, very bad accident out here.
Oh no.
Yeah, we had they were cutting somebody out of a vehicle.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so we're just praying that no one was seriously injured.
Yeah.
Looks of the one car.
Wow.
I don't know.
Is it raining there? Like
No.
no?
Let's see where we are. You come over railroad tracks and you come down, and then you've got, you know, two-way traffic. Well, you got to come into this little media, and you got to wait till you can come out. Well, if somebody's coming this way,
Yeah.
somebody's trying to go.
Yeah. Too bad.
No, we were sitting out on our front porch when we heard the accident.
Be careful with the sound when I plug this in, okay?
No children.
Yeah, I hope not.
Have you got your sound set correctly so far as you know?
They're both on. I can turn it off, but nothing's blaring right now.
Okay, ask Sheila to give me a check. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Check, check. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. You can stop for just a second.
Okay.
Oh boy. I think that's the best we're going to be able to do. There's Brenda Griggers is watching.
Mm-hmm. Do I need to turn that on?
It is on.
Oh, okay.
Just want to get the settings right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Gene, that was pretty good this morning. Can you segue us from this morning to today, or do something while I get this one last audio check?
Sure, I'd be glad to. This morning we started looking at the Galilean section of Mark, Matthew, and Luke.
No.
And, early in, I think it's about chapter 3 for most of it.
I'm going to.
Chapter 1. And we decided, and we'll save the infancy stories, the prediction of birth, and nativity stories of Jesus until, I don't know, Advent, Christmas, call us funny. So we really talked a lot about John the Baptist, his call for repentance, his name calling. So much for that not being a acceptable behavior. He called the scribes and Pharisees a brood of vipers.
Mm-hmm.
They tried that with Chrysler market, their new race car. They had a full cluster of them, and they were going to call it a brood of vipers, and then they realized that was not a good thing. That's a bad joke. Viper is a big-cylinder performance car from Dodge. So anyway, as we were talking about the whole idea of what is and what isn't, heaven and hell, and we kind of repeated some stuff that we talked about on Wednesday evenings for lo these many weeks. It's another great example of what isn't there, what is there,
Mm-hmm.
and what it actually says with what is there. And Bert gave a teaser about wheat pairs and gnashing of teeth. So hopefully some of the folks from this morning will either watch live tonight or pick up on some video later and find out that, you know, this Bible thing is pretty consistent with the good news. Because God is a pretty consistent God.
Mm-hmm. Wow. As you said, generation of vipers. So y'all didn't talk about vipers as snake. I know it's a fast car too.
It is a snake.
Yeah.
But you mean that they weren't literally snakes?
Mm-hmm. What'd you say, Gene?
What did you say?
Oh, we're talking about that song a couple years ago. We're gonna get a fast car.
Oh.
I just sent it. Please use that one.
I've always wanted to drive a Viper, not a snake.
I hear you.
Folks with $150,000 cars usually don't let me drive them. I don't know what that is. They've seen me drive my Jeep car. I don't know. My daughter told stories on me.
Well, they probably wouldn't let me either, Gene.
Yeah.
While we were in Maine, we rode in a Tesla. What kind was that? Some kind of sport Tesla. We didn't drive it, but man, that thing took off like from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds.
Yeah, the torque is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like being in one of those big Air Force jets.
Yes. Yep, exactly.
But when the extension cord runs out, what do you do then?
I know. It's. I know.
You can let me in now.
Okay.
There are several companies, including Tesla, now making electric pickup trucks.
They're making what?
Electric pickup trucks.
Oh. Okay.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Wow.
I understand the concept of electric motors. I don't know what you do with that 1,000. Nice. Where's that going? What did it take to mine the lithium necessary? What did it take to mine the lithium? Oh, by the way, they're still using carbon fuel most of the time to make electricity to charge the battery.
Mm-hmm.
So how are we helping the environment? Big's feeling.
Yeah.
Bert in his microphone.
I know. He's trying to get it going. Tell me when you're ready to share.
Okay, ask Sheila to say something, please. Check 1, 2, 3.
Check 1, 2, 3.
Well, that didn't work.
Check 2, 3, 1.
It's picking her up. It's not very loud. Try again.
Check 1, 2, 3.
No.
Check 1, 2, 3.
Gene, will you give me a check 1, 2, 3?
Check 1, 2, 3. Bahama is in Maine. They have lobster with butter. It's a lovely place to drive a Tesla car. You park it in the garage. One day when we get our own studios, Bert, somebody else will be doing all of it.
Okay. All right, I think I got it. Can you all hear me?
Again.
I can barely hear you, and none of this new equipment is working. And I didn't have time to make sure that it did work, so I'm going to try putting my microphone back on here. That didn't work. Let me go to audio settings and see if I can turn it all the way up. It is all the way up.
Remember it was this.
I don't need that right now.
Okay. Computer speed is muted. Okay. Tell me when you're ready for me to share.
Okay, hang on. I'm
Okay.
working as hard as I can.
Okay.
All right. Ask Sheila to say something, please.
1, 2, 3. 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3.
Where do you think that's coming out?
Your computer.
One more time, Sheila.
1, 2, 3. 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3.
Again.
3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3. 3, 2, 1.
It's not really making any difference, is it?
No. Oh, the speaker's on.
Okay, ask her to do it again.
3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3.
Okay,
3, 2, 1.
we're just going to go with this and I'll listen carefully. So the two things that we are struggling with is that, and being late, is that I don't have my arm. I left my key and the arm to hold the phone, so we have had to rig the phone up for Facebook right here on the top of one of the speakers. The new speakers I didn't have time to get together and work because I've been working hard on this study, and we need to get started because we're now late starting, and it's my fault. Maybe it's just hard to get back into the swing of things. I don't know. But it's definitely not been easy. Okay, you can click Enable Editing, and that will get rid of the bar at the top. And then you can click Slideshow, and we should be set to go.
Welcome, everybody. Good
Welcome,
to see
y'all. Welcome,
again.
everybody on Facebook. Welcome to everybody. I just moved this, and I didn't mean to.
Welcome to you guys. Welcome back.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks, Debbie.
Good to see you, Kia.
Hey, Kia. And we got our regulars on Zoom as well as hopefully some more today.
Hey, Ruby.
Okay, so what is this going to look like if I hold it up right here? It's backwards. I'm going to fix that. Okay, I need to go to Facebook to see what that looks like. Can you go to Facebook? I can't do it.
I will try. I'll have to come out of this mode, okay?
Okay. Where's Patricia's face in the screen? That's what I want to know. Just open up Facebook, Patricia, and look and see where it is on the screen. Or maybe I can do it now. No, I still can't do it. I be stressing. Stop stressing, Bert. It ain't gonna help. I'm not showing that we're on.
On Facebook?
On Facebook?
I saw Ruby typed in something. Yeah.
That's really strange.
Can you see both of us, Jean? Are we off the screen any? Because we can't tell.
I found it.
Okay. You're a little bit off. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a little bit off, so it needs to tilt toward me just a tad. Okay, well, let's see what happens when I do that. That'll have to do. All right, are we good to go, ladies and gentlemen?
I think so.
Okay. Are you on the side? Are you on the slideshow? I don't
I
think
need
so.
to go back. Sorry. Yeah, here we are.
All right. So if I hold this up, I want to see where I hold it. How's that? Okay, it looks like I need to go this way a little bit. Something like right in front of the microphone, maybe. Yeah, that's in the ballpark. In front of the microphone. I got it. All right, let me go back to where I was. Lord help me. Where is it? That's not it. That's it. That's us, right? Okay. All right, as you can see, it's the wheat and the tares. And the question is it about the last day judgment and punishment? We talked about it this morning. You know, it sort of aims toward everyone who's looking for hell in the Bible. They go run into this parable. Isn't it funny how they go looking for something literal in a parable? Let me just ponder that for a minute. Okay, so I want to go know what a literal fact is. So let me go look at a made-up story.
That's funny.
At any rate. So what's the context of this parable of the wheat and the tares? This is the context. Next, please. Okay, so this is Matthew 13, 1 through 3a. Matthew 13 is just full of parables, okay? It's a parable chapter. And so here's Jesus. He's trying to teach the crowds. He sat down to teach them. There were too many. People couldn't see him. People couldn't hear him. So apparently he went out, as it says over here in verses 1 through 3a, that same day Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea. When a teacher sits down, when a rabbi sits down, that means he's ready to teach. We think of Jesus standing up to preach or standing up to teach. He did the opposite. Thank you, 2,000 years of misinformation. All right, so it's clear in the Bible when he sits down, it's to teach. So such a great crowd gathered around him that he got up and got into a boat and sat on the boat, which means I'm going to teach from the boat. And there are some coves on the north shore of the Sea of Galilee near where the disciples lived and where Jesus centered his ministry near Capernaum, where the coves create kind of a natural amphitheater effect because the bank is going away like that and the beach is curved. You can see him sitting in a cove on a boat in 2 or 3 different places. One is near St. Peter, Primacy of Peter, somewhere near Tabgha. And it's really cool to think about him, you know, even today, sitting on that boat while the people gather like an amphitheater on the hillside down toward the shore. And that's what apparently happened in this shot that I found online. He's saying, how can I teach all these people? When I sit down, nobody can see me or hear me. I know. I'll get in Peter's boat and annoy him. I don't know if he got annoyed or not, but, you know, it took Peter a while to adjust to the idea of being a quote-unquote religious person. So here's Matthew 13, and you can come back and look at it in brief if you want to, okay? You can come back and look at these, but what I want you to get is the gist. The first part of the chapter 13, he's sitting in the boat teaching, and then he gets up and goes into, quote, the house, which we can only assume is the house where they were living in Capernaum. It might have been Peter's mother-in-law's house, actually. That's all speculation, but he goes into the house. Now, while he's out here teaching folks, he explains, I'm not going to explain it to them, but if you want to ask me privately, that's cool. So when they got to the house, which parable did they want to know about? The one about the wheat and the tares. It threw them. And it throws us still today. And if the disciples didn't get it, what makes you think you did on the first run? Yeah. Okay? I mean, that's the ultimate in hubris and pride to think that, you know, what is it called? The Dunning-Kruger effect? Where you have just enough information to talk yourself into being an expert when really you're an idiot and you don't know anything. But you think, it's like the flat earthers. You know, they don't have enough information or ability in science to prove that the earth is flat, so all they do is just throw jargon and sidesteps when the scientists challenge them. They just don't know enough to know how dumb they are. Or they can't see how dumb they are. All right, so what did you say, Gene?
There was a headline the other day that flat earthers from all around the globe gathering for conviction.
Can you turn that up at all? Like all the way up. I can barely hear him.
Mine's all the way up too. See?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I've got to get more volume out of this thing. I don't know what to do. But Gene, if you'll just speak up, I'll do my best to hear you, okay?
It was a dumb comment. I was saying,
Gene, if you'll just speak up.
the other day that flat earthers from all around the globe were gathering for their convention.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's sad. That took me a second to get that. That is so sad. You know, and they talk about the atmosphere a lot. Isn't the word sphere in atmosphere? Oh, dear. I wonder why. Okay, so Jesus is sitting in the boat teaching, and he says, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seed in his field. Now, the field, according to Jesus' interpretation, which he tells the disciples about later, which is in red here, the field is the world, Jesus says, in his analysis. He does a sort of an allegorical interpretation of his own parable. And then he says, sow good seed in his field. And then the field, the world, is owned by a someone. Notice it just says someone up here. It says someone. But he's later called the householder. He's later called master. And Jesus says he is a parabolic figure for representing the Son of Man. Who's the Son of Man? Well, that's one of Jesus's favorite humble terms for himself, because he doesn't want to come right out and say, you know, me the Messiah. You know, he's not selling anything. He knows who he is, and he leaves it to others to come to that conclusion. So when he says the Son of Man, some might take it as, oh, well, he means the Son of Man from Daniel who will come on the last day. He doesn't mean himself, but he means himself. All right? So what about the good seed? Here's a curveball for you. The parable continues. Sporos is the normal word for seeds that come from plants and that make plants. Sporos is not the word Jesus used in this parable. He used the word sperma. I'll let you guess what that word is related to, and it is the word for human offspring. So he's telling a story supposedly about wheat and tares, but then he uses the word for human offspring. Ever notice that? So a clear sign that we're talking about a parable, a clear sign that these seed are kingdom children. All right, look down at Galatians down there at the bottom if you can. It says, now to Abraham was the promise made, and to his seed. So that means descendants or human ancestors of Abraham. And the word used there is sperma, and it's the same with 2 Timothy 2:8. Jesus Christ of the seed, that means descendancy or human ancestry of David, was raised from the dead. You follow? That we're not just talking about plants here. We're clearly talking about kingdom stuff, end of the world stuff, last day stuff, resurrection stuff, evil, where it comes from, there's a lot going on in here. So let's go to the next one. So he continues, he sowed this good seed in his field. Now the field, Jesus says, is the world. And it belongs to its owner, the Son of Man. And the Son of Man is free to do with his field, his world, what he, the Son of Man, wants to. And he chooses to sow, that is, to deploy good seed, kingdom children, in his field, the world. Notice in Job it reads, everything under the sun is mine. And in 1 Corinthians 10:26, for the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof. The
world and they that dwell therein.
And they that dwell therein. All right, he's got the whole world in his hands.
Yeah.
All right. So next. But while everybody was asleep, this is a really interesting thing here. Okay, so while Jesus actually said, but while everybody was asleep, well, was the Son of Man asleep too when the enemy snuck into the garden? But who's sleeping here? I thought, as it says in Isaiah at the bottom, you know, in Psalm 121, he who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. Well, wait a minute. What was he doing when the enemy snuck in? Had he stepped aside? He had chores to do? What's distracting him?
He got tired.
He got tired. He needed a nap.
Yeah.
Okay, so Isaiah 27 says, on that day the Lord with his cruel and great strong sword will kill the dragon that is in the sea. And on that day a pleasant vineyard. Sing about it. I, the Lord, am its keeper. Keeper of the vineyard. Every moment I water it. I guard it night and day so that no one can harm it. Well, what happened to this poor little wheat field? I mean, the enemy got in there and the enemy caused problems. So, I mean, that makes you come to the conclusion that either the Son of Man in the parable, the owner, the vineyard, the wheat field owner, the field owner, either slept while this happened like everybody else, or he saw it happening and couldn't do anything about it because he wasn't powerful enough, or he wouldn't do anything about it because he allowed it for some reason. I'll let you take your pick. So, everybody's sleeping? Should we assume that the Son of Man is sleeping too? It's a good question. Next slide. Okay, it continues Matthew 13:25a, and then his enemy came. So, whoever this Son of Man, owner, master is, he's got an enemy. We don't know where he came from. We don't know what his powers are. We don't know what he's up to, but something's afoot. All right. So the owner has an enemy, and Jesus, in the interpretation of the allegorical interpretation of his parable, says that this enemy represents the devil. He says the enemy, the devil, came and went, and no one knew it but maybe him. Did he know him? Did he know that the enemy came and went? Did he know what the enemy did? Turns out he did, because he tells everybody when they ask.
And he knows all things.
Yes. So you would think the Son of Man knows all things and doesn't have to sleep, because this is a resurrected person. This is the glorified Son of God.
But remember, he was also 100% human and 100% spirit.
Yeah.
God. So he had to sleep, get tired just like us.
Well, he did get tired, but we're talking about a parable.
Okay.
Okay, we're not talking about Jesus. We're talking about a parable about the Son of Man who represents the glorified Christ of the resurrection in the future. Okay? So we're not talking about, we're talking about eschatological matters. This whole thing is about end time. This whole thing is about Judgment Day, Resurrection Day, the last day, the Lord's great day.
Study of eschatology.
All right? So yeah, I'm going to get to that in a second. Good call, Patricia. Okay, this enemy is not a brazen midday murderer. He's a sneaky midnight mischief. Okay? He came and went and no one knew it. Well, if he had the power to destroy the world, he'd have done it. But no, he's just getting in there and monkeying with the, what do you do when you monkey with an engine? You monkey with the, I don't know, my son would know what I'm talking about. There's a saying. All right, so I want you to do one of these for me, okay? Yeah, see if you can do that one. I'll be right back.
All right. So Matthew 13:25, and sowed weeds among the wheat. The enemy didn't create the weeds. Children of the evil one. The enemy deployed the weeds. Children of the evil one.
So you're aiming at yourself instead of the camera? You're aiming it at yourself instead of the camera?
Ah, sorry.
Yeah.
That way. Okay. Got it. I'm sorry. All right. So Facebookers can see this now. All right. So Matthew 10:36, I'll read, a person's enemies will be the members of his own household. And then John 8:44, you are from your father the devil, and you choose to do your father's desires. James 4:4, therefore whosoever wishes to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God. That sounds familiar. Then 1 John 3:10, whoever does not love his brother and sister is not from God. That is very familiar.
Yeah, so okay. Thank you. So these sayings to me, these 4 scripture verses here, you know, what is the enemy and what's he up to? These children of the evil one, you know, what have they been deployed to do? What are they likely to do? And I think that these 4 verses help us answer. It helps us to know that the enemy is not someone we don't know. It might be in our own house. The enemy, the people who are of your father, the devil, are doing what he desires. And what he desires is to control, to sabotage, to make sure everything goes well for him and bad for everybody else. Have you ever worked with a colleague who you knew was just doing everything they could behind your back to sabotage you? Oh boy. Wow. So, therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God. And a friend of the world and an enemy of God has to do with your priorities are selfishly accumulating what you can and winning. You want to win, you want to collect, you want to buy, you want control, you want power, you want prestige, and that's how you become a friend of the world, not a friend of God. And the final one, whoever does not love his brother and sister is not from God. So I think the number one thing is that it's not loving for these weeds to come in here and start growing up and stealing nutrients from the ground for the kingdom children, and robbing them of their vitality, and thus threatening the crop that would feed everybody. Because you can't make bread if you ain't got wheat.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, And if you don't grow wheat and store it, you won't have anything to eat for a long time. It's called famine or crop failure.
So how does that connect, though, to this scripture here?
Which one?
Loving his brother and sister is not from God.
Okay, so the children of the evil one are not loving the wheat. They are there to bother the wheat, to steal from the wheat, to lie from the wheat, to hurt the wheat, kill the wheat if they can, at least as much as they can. These are the people who are sabotaging God's purposes. And what is God's purpose? Love.
Mm-hmm.
The 1 John also says that God is love. Yeah. And if you don't love your brother and your sister, you don't love God.
You're not of God.
You don't even love God.
Don't know God.
You can't say I love God and then hate your brother and your sister.
Yes.
So
okay.
So the weeds are there to hate and hurt. They're not there to help and grow.
Gotcha.
There's robbing. They're hiding, causing trouble.
Makes sense.
Sneaky little guys. All right, the next one is, that doesn't look like my next one.
What's the next one?
That one?
That one, okay.
Okay, so this is where it turns a little bit, and I've got the longest quote, and it's 2 verses. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then their weeds appeared as well, and the slaves of the householder came and said to him, Master, did you not sow good weeds in your field? Where then did these weeds come from? I love it that Jesus has the slaves making so much sense. And the first thing they think is somebody messed up. Mm-hmm. Who messed up? I want to make sure you know it wasn't me messed up. So how about you? They actually question their master. Did you mess up? They're saying, did you buy bad seed? Did you check in the bag? Because somebody could have sold you expensive seed, and at the bottom of it, it could have been a third full with that grass. If you don't check.
Weeds.
So he's saying, did you check under the hood before you bought the car?
Exactly.
Okay. And if you didn't mess up, and you know 100% that there was nothing but wheat in that bag, how did this happen? Look, it's a mess. Okay, so the slaves are being dutiful. They're reporting. They're complaining. They're upset. You can see that in this slide. Okay, the next one. And look what the owner says. He says, an enemy has done this. Well, how do you know? He saw him. Okay, so wheat seeds were deployed by the owner to produce life-sustaining bread. That's what wheat's for primarily in that culture. They could make some other stuff with it, but primarily bread.
Yeah.
That was the whole point. You grind the kernels into flour, then the flour is given some oil and some water and other little tasty herbs if you want to add them, and then a pinch of yeast from a previous dough with some live culture in it, put in there, make that whole thing rise.
You taking me back to Maine to that bread that Judy made.
Oh, Judy made some amazing homemade bread. We couldn't stop eating it. We were even hungry.
Every meal.
Okay, all right. But the weed seeds were deployed by the enemy to harm life. They aren't serving any purpose in that garden. Okay, they're not serving any purpose that's going to help the wheat. Their very presence and their behavior is hurting the wheat. They're hurting other people. And they don't care. That's just what they're doing. They're friends of the world. They're not thinking about other people or what God might want or what the right thing to do might be. They don't care. So John 6:33, Jesus reminds us that for the bread of God is he who gives life to the world. Jesus referring to himself as the bread of life. I am the living bread. Whoever eats of this bread will live forever. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life. And so here's that tension right here that Jesus taught about in this parable, where you have a tension, a battle between good and evil, and it's going on in a wheat field. And the weeds and the wheat are like this. And you have Jesus coming to give life. Jesus is the bread of life. And yet we've got evil in the garden, and it's working in opposition to Jesus and to his ministry and to his goals. Right? See it? All right.
How does this show up in the church?
See, we have to be careful, and I'm getting to that. We have to be careful because we're not good in judging. But there is a lot of sick stuff going on in churches. Some more than others, thank God. And there's some sick pastors out there. Hopefully fewer of those than there are who are trying to do their best and don't mean to be doing harm. But there are predators, there are wolves, and there's no doubt about that. So, here we go. The slaves asked the master, then do you want us to go and gather them? They're saying you want us to go out there and pluck the weeds. Let's go get them out of there. So the slaves are concerned about the presence of evil in the garden, and they're proposing to remove it. All right? So it made me think of these two examples from Luke's gospel that are back to back. John said to Jesus, Master, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him because he does not follow with us. But Jesus said to him, don't stop him, for whoever is not against you is for you. You can't tell the difference between wheat and weeds. Why are you playing judge? Okay? And then right following that, when the days drew near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem, and he sent messengers ahead of him, and on their way they entered a village of the Samaritans to make ready for him to spend the night. But that town did not receive him, because his face was set toward Jerusalem. And when disciples James and John saw this and heard it, they said, Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them? But he turned and rebuked them, and they went on to another village.
Wow.
James, John, you can't tell the difference between wheat and tares.
They want to blow
Stop judging.
Up.
You know, that may be why he called them the sons of thunder. Because lightning from heaven is... Yeah, so he's like, well, Lord, you call us Boanerges, I think is how you pronounce it. I'm not sure. I'll have to go look at Boanerges. I'll have to go look it up, but that means sons of thunder. And here they are saying, let us call lightning down from heaven. I don't know who they zapped previously, but it is kind of funny to think of that. That might have been why. And if you have another reason, Gene, I don't want to hear it right now. Because he's got another theory.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll tell it to you later. Not good. All right. So look at here. Look at here. Look at here. Situ versus zizania. All right. Situ is the Greek word for the wheat, and zizania is the Greek word for those tares, for those weeds. Okay. Based on those pictures, who's qualified to tell the difference here, and who's wise enough to judge?
I can.
No,
I'm kidding.
Go
I'm
right
just
ahead.
joking.
Go
I'm
right
just
ahead. Good luck.
I have the Spirit of God, you know.
Yeah. Have you ever heard the term, the phrase, the cure is worse than the disease?
No.
Yeah. So, you know, it's like they used to do bloodletting with leeches, and it was, you know, that was just another slow, painful way to die. You know? Okay, so the cure is worse than the disease. What this literally means is that the medical treatment for an illness produces a worse net result than the illness does. Threatens a non-negligible risk of doing so, especially via adverse side effects. Okay, right?
Yeah, yes.
Now, figuratively, the solution or proposed solution by the slaves, that we pluck out the weeds now, might produce a worse net result than the problem does. Threatens a non-negligible risk of doing so, especially via unintended consequences. So he's saying, you're not capable of doing it. There are reasons why I'm not letting you do it. We're not going to pull those weeds up. We're just not going to do it.
This reminds me of a comedian who told a joke about, they ask you to take this medication, but here are some side effects. Take 2 spoons before bedtime, but the side effects is that, it can cause slow death. May cause...
Well, if you fall asleep, people who fall asleep often die. Yeah.
All these names.
The cure is worse than...
I know. It's like, why am I taking this medication?
So here's the next one. But the Son of Man, the landowner, replied, "No, for in gathering the weeds, you would uproot the wheat along with them." Mm-hmm. You would. I know you. You will. Yep. You can't tell. You're not qualified.
Yep.
Leave my weeds alone. Okay. Yep. So look at the bottom here. Okay. So a good farmer would never fail to remove weeds immediately and repeatedly. But what kind of seed are we talking about here? It's not plant seeds. It's sperma. It's human seed. This is human. These are human beings we're talking about here. And even though a good farmer would never fail to remove weeds immediately and repeatedly, the Son of Man is not quick about people who want to judge and send people to everlasting punishment or to any other judgment of any kind, because we're not qualified to pick and judge. We don't know what we're doing. The fact that we think we want to know what we're doing when it comes to judgment is probably the most spectacular example of the Dunning-Kruger effect that I can think of. So in Matthew, and after all, removing weeds does do some damage, but leaving them is, in farming terms, worse. But we're not talking about farming. We're talking about people. All right? So Matthew has Jesus saying, "It is not the will of your Father in heaven that even one of these little ones should be lost. And this is the will of him who sent me, that I should lose nothing of all he has given to me. The Lord is not slow about his promise, but is patient with you, not wanting any to perish."
But all should come to repentance.
So when he says, "No, leave them alone. Let them alone." What's the word? Well, here's your word. Aphimemi. And aphimemi can mean 3 things, and I counted them all carefully. All right? So 73 times it's translated as leave or depart, and 48 times as let or allow or permit, and 53 times as forgive. Now, if you take the first example, like "I will not leave you orphaned," you could also say, "I will not allow you to become orphaned by my leaving," or when I depart, I won't leave you alone. I'm sending you the Comforter." All right? So this is 174 times in 133 verses. This is an important term in the New Testament. So let both of them grow together until harvest, and at harvest time I will tell the reapers. So you could also say, let me put my finger over here. You could say, leave both of them to grow together. Couldn't you? Allow both of them to, and where he says, "Suffer the little children to come to me," that means let them come to me. But you could also say, leave them alone. Leave them come to me, or even forgive, if you think about it. If you're going to suffer them to come to you, then you can forgive them for being there. Forgive them to come to me. Forgive them for being present. Forgive them for being in our midst. Let them be here. Allow them to be here. Leave them alone. Yeah. So these are good parallels for what we're talking about here in terms of leave the weeds alone. Now, I know the evil one planted them, but that didn't mean that they're evil through and through in the sense that they were created evil by an evil creator. There is no other creator. These are people who are doing bad stuff and are on the wrong track. And Jesus is telling a parable about the Lord, the Son of Man, not being in a hurry to jerk people out, because these are his people too. Weeds and wheat alike. Both are in the kingdom. All right, let's go to the next one. So check this out. I bet you didn't know this. Look at this word, bundles. Bundles. Collect the weeds first and bind them, he told the slaves. Bind them into bundles to be burned in the oven. Well, you know they didn't have lumber back then. I mean, there weren't a lot of trees. Wood was extremely expensive and scarce. So scarce that when they found that first century boat in the mud back in the 1990s, and they excavated and pulled it out, turns out that there were 13 different kinds of wood scrapped together from previous boats and recycled to try to make a new boat.
Wow.
No wood. They didn't have wood to build, much less to burn. It was expensive. It was valuable. It was rare. So what did they do? Well, you can look it up in any encyclopedia. They took grasses or weeds, they cut them and wrapped them into bundles, turning them into tightly rolled logs, and they used those for fuel for the oven to bake bread. Now this is getting weird. Think about it. Okay, so the wheat seeds were ground and made into dough, but the weeds were bundled as logs for the oven to bake the bread. So now if you're working for your daddy, the evil one, the enemy, and you were trying to stop these goody two-shoes people, kingdom children, and you were trying to mess with them, would you be happy if your efforts ended up accidentally like being used by God to help them? Well, this is what's happening. He didn't say throw them away or just, make a huge pile somewhere and light them on fire. He said bind them. To do that, you have to count them. You have to they're still involved here. You're going to the trouble of bundling them. Why? Because they're valuable. You need them to bake the bread. Now, please tell me I don't know that anybody teaches that or shows anybody that. He's not throwing them away. He's using what was intended for evil for good. They're going to these recalcitrants who were trying to stop the bread production are going to end up in being the only item that's essential for bread production other than the wheat itself, and that is these bundles of grasses and weeds for the logs in the oven. Next one. So there it is, the word. Collect the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned in the oven. The word is kamenos. It means literally oven, furnace, or kiln in the Freiburg lexicon. In the Little Scott lexicon, it's an oven, furnace, or kiln for baking, smelting metals, or for burning bricks. Sounds like a lot of industry going on in that little village. They're making stuff. All right, now here's another word that's very similar. It's a synonym for the other one. No, you went too far. Okay, this is klibanos or klibanos. And so why would you put grass in an oven? Notice that Jesus says in Matthew 6:30, but if God so clothed the grass of the field, which is alive today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you? Here's an example of grass being thrown into the oven. But what do you put grass in an oven for? To bake.
I thought it must have made, it's another scripture. It talks about God feeds the birds. He will provide for you.
That's in the Sermon on the Mount. It's in the same section. He's going to provide for you. He takes care of the birds. He takes care of, note the lily of the fields. They neither toil nor weep.
Right.
Yet Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like
One of them,
these.
yes. Okay.
Yeah, that's
sounds just like
Sermon on the Mount. All right, so it says in the Louis-Nida lexicon that the klibanos was a dome-like structure made of clay in which dried grass was burned to bake bread. That's a quote from one of the major lexicons of the New Testament. We're not making this up. It's for the oven. That's what they did with it when they bundled it. They baked bread. Okay. All right. So here's an example of most people when they think, put the grain in the barn. Well, you know what we think when we think barn. We either think a barn like out in the country or we think a silo. But Here's a barn from, I believe this was the excavation at Hatzor. So this would have been the Israelite period, somewhere around the 9th century. And it's they know what it is because of what the stuff they found in it. So this is an actual barn, and it's a room added onto the side of a house. The storage room is next to the kitchen. So they go in and get the grain, and they come back out, and they start grinding, and then they start making dough, and then they start baking. They're right next to one another.
That sounds like our family of islands in the Bahamas. My grandmother had an outside kitchen.
Yeah?
Debbie lived there. Debbie can speak to that. We spent summers up there, and no light, no running water, anything. And the kitchen was separate where she baked, but it wasn't an oven. It was like, it looked like this. And she would build it, you know, with stones and straws and put bread in.
And why was it outside? Why was it not inside the house?
I don't know.
Smoke.
Ah.
That's why when they do the excavations, like at Bethsaida and other places, they often, if they find an oven, it's either at the edge of, next to the open courtyard where people ate and slept, or it's right there in the courtyard itself in the middle where they would sometimes make a conical shaped one, and the smoke just went straight up from the, you didn't have to build a chimney. What's a chimney? This is the second, you know, this is the 1st century AD. No chimneys. So it says, but gather the wheat into my barns. Now the grain and the weeds are kept. Have we done this one yet?
That's one we have up now. You didn't talk about that.
The grain and the weeds are both kept. The wheat is kept. The weeds are kept. They both will be used in making bread. And I was reminded of a quote from Joseph in Genesis 50. Joseph said to his brothers who betrayed him and sold him into slavery. Now Joseph is the big man in Egypt. He got promoted. He said to his brothers who betrayed him and thought he was dead, even though you intended to do harm to me, God intended it for good. And Joseph became their salvation, the ones who sold him into slavery. This is making Joseph a type of, Old Testament type of Jesus.
Yeah.
The one who saves his brothers who betrayed him. Right?
Yeah.
So, that's the end of the parable. But is it the end of the interpretation? Not quite. All right? The Son of Man shall, the disciples say, explain this to us. And he says, okay, yeah, the field is the world, and the seed are the children of God, and the weeds are the enemy of God. And he went through the devil and all of that. And then he said this, the Son of Man shall send forth his messengers. That's the word for, that's angelos, angels. And they shall gather up out of his kingdom all the stumbling blocks and all those doing the unlawlessness. And that's Young's literal translation. But I looked at that sentence really long and hard. Look at it in the red. You can't read it. That's transliteration directly from the Greek. This is in word-for-word translation at the bottom. Gathered up out of his kingdom all the stumbling blocks and the causes of sin. There's nothing that I can find in that sentence to bend it and make it say that it's for the destruction of the unlawless people themselves. It simply says the destruction, the burning of gathering up of all the stumbling blocks and the causes of sin. Not sinners, causes of sin. And what's the biggest cause of sin? The devil, whom Jesus came to defeat. So is it the end? Not quite yet. And they will throw them into the furnace of fire where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. I don't have time to do any of this. What should we do?
We can stop and continue next week on that. Hey, why don't you want to entertain some questions or discussion and come back to it next week? We can pick up.
Yeah, I think I want to get to the gnashing of teeth next week. Yeah.
Someone has a question?
Speak.
Can people be stumbling blocks in our lives?
She says what?
Can people be stumbling blocks in our lives? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting word. It's skandalon. scandalous, scandalize, offend. But also it can refer to causing someone else to stumble. When you're the stumbling block for somebody else. Also, I think it's interesting that Jesus spoke prophetically about himself when he spoke of the stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. So, and he said, blessed are those who are not scandalized by me, offended by me, stumbled by me. It's the same word. That blessed are those who don't find me a stumbling block. And what I say a stumbling block. So yeah, and of course people, I mean, I think the point of the evil one putting the weeds into the field with the wheat, the whole point of that is to trip them up, to hurt them. Yeah, people can definitely be a stumbling block in your life. And I think the ones that scare me the most are the people who, I don't know, maybe the psychologists would call them like a sociopath or something, but there are people who don't have any conscience and they scam people all day long, like these people on these telephone calls. They scam people all day long and they don't feel bad about it at all. In fact, they think it's funny. Okay, that's wheat that's the weeds in the wheat field. That's people who have no problem with taking advantage of those less sharp or less capable than they are. They don't have any problem lying to them to get their money. As long as they get their money, they don't care. It's just a target. It reminds me of that shooter up in Washington, D.C., you know. He, like a coward, he lay down in the trunk of his truck, stuck the barrel of the gun out by the license plate, and picked off people while they were walking down the street or pumping their gas at the gas station. He just killed them, just murdered them, and no conscience.
I know. But stumbling block. When I hear stumbling block, particularly growing up, my mom would warn us about different company. We call like friends. We call company. They don't keep company with those girls, or they're bad company for you. They're not good for you. Like they become stumbling blocks. Like they don't have the same values you do. I don't need you to hang out there. Come inside. The kind of thing. And so, I hear Debbie's question too, and I think taking it further, it's often used in church around persons who may not have the same values you do spiritually or theologically. They don't believe the same things. Going to the clubs and drinking and all that was, compiled in this category. So if you did all these things here, you were bad company. You'll be a stumbling block to someone who's trying to live for God or live for Christ. Okay. So
yeah, I have a problem with that.
And so I think, when I hear Debbie's question, that's what I think about.
I know, and I'm having a problem with it. Maybe you can help me, but it seems to me that these are two different things. What I hear you describing is people who have strict rules about where their children should be and who their children should be with, and that's a good thing if you're protecting your kids. Not sure that has to do with good or evil, except that it's probably pretty good parenting if you don't let your children be in the wrong place at the wrong time in the dark for their own good, or with a crowd that's committing crimes or has been in jail or something like that. But children aside for just a moment, and let's talk about adults. When we talk about tripping people up, hurting people, maybe including yourself, we're talking about people who are victimizing others. They are working to harm in order to profit and be a friend of the world. And they don't care how they get there, and they don't care who they hurt along the way. And there are people like that in church too, of course. There are pastors who are like that. We've seen victimizing pastors who have who don't feel at all bad about the people that they've lied to and cheated and stolen from and hurt and even molested. They don't care. Okay, and that's direct harm to the wheat. Now, it's not to say that we all don't have a little weed in us. By that, I don't mean stones. But we all have a little bit of weed. We all have a little bit of weed in us.
Not marijuana.
But hopefully we all have a little wheat in us too.
Not that kind of weed, Sheila.
Gene's got his eyebrows raised like this.
I am 1 mile away from Kentucky.
What does that mean?
He's close to it. He can get it.
Yeah, but that weed up there may be blue. They have bluegrass state up there. So yeah, I think my concern is that when you look at it in terms of you can't talk to this person. Let's say you're an adult and you have been indoctrinated, and I'm not supposed to talk to these kind of people. I'm not supposed to approve of these people who believe this. I don't want to mess up my witness, so I'm not going to hang out with those people. Those prohibitions against being in relationship with persons who either have lost their way or have theologies that disagree with your own. Okay, Jesus didn't stop people. It never stopped Jesus from reaching out and going beyond those boundaries of gender or race or religion. He stepped right across them. He was actually kind of careless about the way that he reached out beyond those boundaries to other people. It wasn't about the rules of who I can and can't be friends with. It's about discerning that there are people out there that are doing harm. And we're one of them. Let's don't lie about it here. I mean, let's be honest that we've had our weedy moments.
Speak for yourself.
We've had our weedy moments. So what we're talking about is a righteousness that comes not from our ability to do it right and get it right, but from Christ's righteousness. And that's why John the Baptist, to go back to him from this morning with Gene, that's why he told that's why Jesus told him, look, I want you to baptize me. And he said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not worthy. And Jesus said, we do this to fulfill all righteousness. I hear somebody's voice. I hear
can you
somebody needs to mute. Somebody needs to mute. Hey, Debbie, can you mute?
Debbie, she probably stepped away and didn't.
Oh, my mistake. Sorry.
No problem. No problem. So we're not talking about restrictions here. We're talking about recognizing that evil is among us and within us to some degree, and that it can't last. It's going away. Satan's going down, and in the parable, this owner, this Son of Man, he's just not going to take out the weeds. He's just not going to do it. Okay? So, and in the end, what happens? Evil is used for good. Even in the cross, we see this.
Yeah.
Evil used for good. What they intended for evil, God has used in Christ Jesus to forgive all. So anyway, so that's different. I think we're talking about two different things. I don't like the protectionism and isolation of legalism. And that Jesus wasn't about that. And I don't think that's what he's talking about in terms of stumbling blocks here. It's not who's got bad habits, you know, or who's not living right, or who doesn't believe the right things, or maybe I shouldn't hang out with them. It's about that there are people actively harming you and people you love.
Okay.
What are you going to do about it? You know?
Yeah.
And we're not smart enough to judge. But
I think we do it all the time, though. I mean, even in churches, who's thinking and hoping that they're doing good. You know, in our church, if you weren't saved or professed Christ, you couldn't take the Lord's Supper. It was like, you know, all the Christians come on this side. You wear white on the first Sunday. You get the Lord's Supper, but the sinners don't. So at church, so what we do is separate after the benediction. All the sinners would leave. It's not funny, but it is.
Yeah.
All the sinners would leave, and then only the saints remain for the Lord's Supper. I mean, that was something that happened every single month, first Sunday of the month in our church.
Your church did what the slaves proposed. Let's get the evil out.
Yeah.
And they were plucking everything and everybody, and it was a disastrous mess, I'm sure. Because nobody knew for sure other people's lives, other people's hearts, other people's business, you know. And who are we to say? So if the master says, don't pull the weeds, how come y'all designed to do it every
we did it
once a month?
We pulled them up every month. Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. I mean that was just evident, and they knew. So people who came to church and they knew they did not have not professed Christ, they knew after the benediction they just started heading toward the door because they knew they were not allowed to have the Lord's Supper. Someone's trying to join us. Is this Ruby?
No. Might be.
No, well, anyway. I don't know if we have any questions on Facebook, but...
Yeah, we've run out of our time, but I'm also aware that I was late getting started, so we'll hang out here for a minute. Feedback and responses, and we'll finish this next week. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to get to the weeping and the wailing and gnashing of teeth. I almost made it.
Yeah.
We'll do that next week. Panta te scandala kai tus poiuntas tan tain anomian. Yeah, all the stumbling blocks and the causes of sin. Do we need someone to mute again?
Hey Ruby.
Hey Ruby, can you mute? We can hear your TV. How you doing, Ruby? Oh, we're watching TLC. What's going on TLC? I bet they got a bunch of weeds on there, or a bunch of people on weed. I'm not sure which.
Oh Lord.
Wait, now what will you pay?
You know, my daddy used to tell me that, he said, I don't care who you hang out with.
Mm-hmm.
You know your values, and you know how you've been brought up. He said, so you use your own.
Boot her or something.
Silent.
It's hard. It's really hard to hear you, but I'm trying, Sheila.
Hold on a second. I'm going to try.
We have two problems. We have a speaker problem, and we also have someone who has an unmuted mic. So, one sec.
I'm trying to figure out how to mute everybody. Hold on a minute.
No. Don't mute everybody.
No, I mean just...
I hate to say this, Patricia, but
You
I
have
want to
to do
hear
it.
her question,
I understand.
and she's unresponsive to us.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could just close her out, and maybe we can help her get back on with the microphone off.
Yeah, okay. I just muted them. Okay.
Okay. You muted everybody or just
No,
her?
just her.
Okay, good. All right, Sheila, you were saying...
Okay. My daddy always said that he didn't care who I hung out with. He said, you have your values. You know how you've been brought up. You make your own decisions on who you hang out with and who you don't hang out with. My grandmother, on the other end, said, even if she hung out with the bad ones, maybe something of her would rub off.
That's nice.
I don't know if that was good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean...
I can see where they're going. You know what I'm saying?
I agree,
And
yeah.
that's kind of what they were trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is that weeding out the weeds or leaving them there and making them happy?
That's leaving them there. That's a good example of leaving them there. Leave them alone.
I mean, I didn't always make the right decisions either, but I'm just saying that's kind of how he brought me up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just because people are quote unquote working for evil in the world and in their relationships doesn't mean that they were created evil, and it doesn't mean they were created by an evil one. They're children of God, but they're lost, and they're destructive, and they're dangerous, and they crucify people, and they cancel people, and they sabotage, they lie, they sneak, they steal, whatever to get by and get an advantage in this world.
Well, I was lost for many, many years, but I'm very thankful
I am too.
Realize what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Good for you.
Because I should have been dead many years ago.
It wasn't for it wasn't not for trying, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
You don't have to say it's all right. It's all right. We've all kind of been there a little bit, I'm sure. Life's hard, and we do all kinds of things to try to stop the pain. Sometimes we think that it's going to go away if we just do everything we can to make as much money as we can, and or to look good in front of other people, just keep up with the Joneses. We think it's going to make the pain go away if we drink or take too many drugs or stuff to try to numb it, but it just compounds the problem and it ruins our relationships. And we think that job we always wanted, you know, that was going to make me feel like a man or make me feel like a woman or make me feel like a success, and then it doesn't. Yeah. You know, and then you hit your midlife crisis, which always stinks, and and you realize, what am I doing this for? And what do I really care about? Who do I care about? Who am I hurting? Could I do something better with my life than this? Yeah. You know?
and that's, you know, that kind of made me mad. I knew what I was doing, you know, and I knew it was wrong. Because, I mean, I did. I had a great bringing up. I mean, my grandmother made sure I was in church all the time. But I guess it's when after she passed away and all that, and you kind of go on your own a little bit, you tend to forget.
No, sure.
Or just try to enjoy the freedom that you always wanted.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I had freedom. I mean, my daddy treated me just like I was a boy, really, because I was the only child for a long time. And, you know, he bought me my first motorcycle, he bought me my first trail bike. So, I mean, I did it all. You know, but again, he told me I knew my choices. So what I did with it was my own fault.
Yeah.
And how has that impacted you raising your own children or grandchildren?
Well, I told them, you know, there's going to be people out there that's going to make it look like life is very exciting. And it's going to draw you in. But you've got to know, first of all, is it right or wrong? If you feel it's wrong, you walk away. If you feel you need to experience it, who am I to tell her they can't? But just learn from Nana what I went through. And it took me until I was 58 years old to get back in the groove of things again, where I know where I belong. You know, and who I'm supposed to be worshiping. And knowing that, you know, going out with this group tonight, you know, is going to give me a good time. But when I come home, who did I hurt?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, my young granddaughter here, she's very wise. And she said to me, she said, you know, Nana, if you had never, ever done all those things, you wouldn't be where you are today. And at first I kind of thought that over, and I'm thinking, I don't get that. But I guess I do. Somewhere along the line, I found out what I was doing was wrong. You know, if I had never done anything bad, I wouldn't know what bad was, would I? And I think everybody needs to experience some things. I'm not saying all things. But I think they need to experience some things.
I always felt like, because I was the oldest, that I didn't have anybody to look at to see what not to do. And my brothers and my brothers and my sister always said, we just watch what Bert did and then don't do that. And I've always resented that. I've always wanted an older brother who was a real mess up. And then I could say, okay, just don't do that.
After they do it,
Oh, Lord. What did the rest of you?
I had 12 sisters. And I taught them how to ride motorcycle and their bikes, how to jump and all that too. So,
Cool.
yeah, you know, well they did. They thought they had a cool sister, but I really wasn't.
Well, You might have been cool. You might have been you might have been just the right kind of cool for them at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, mistakes and all. Well, it's 1:45. Gino, help us out here. What you thinking, man? Had some thoughts tonight?
Just keep marveling at the consistency of God's grace.
I mean, when people go to that parable, the last thing I would have ever been told. I mean, I didn't believe it until I saw it myself, but no one told me anything about, hey, he's protecting the weeds. Hey, he's giving specific instructions to carefully bundle them for use in baking in the oven. I'm like, why haven't I been told that? Well, here's why. Because people are desperate for afterlife proof of hell, and they'll use anything that sounds a little bit like it so they can quote it out of context. And unfortunately, by doing that, they kill what Jesus originally meant and set up a kind of theology that's based on law and punishment. And grace don't work by law and punishment.
No, that's not.
As Gene said, it is God's amazing grace. Yeah. More Gene? More anybody else? All right. Been great to have y'all tonight. I'm sorry about being a little slow getting back into the swing of it. I'm still having I'm going to figure these speakers out. I have the equipment that will fix our audio problem. I just can't make it work yet, and that's because I'm deficient. It wasn't for trying. It was like Gene and I got it partially fixed this afternoon, but then it completely bailed tonight on me when we hooked up Patricia's computer, and I don't know what the deal is.
And can you help us? Then it worked fine the other night.
Yeah, but listen to this, Gene. My speakers are set on the audio for Facebook. Listen. Listen to this, Gene. My speakers are set on the audio for Facebook. Listen. Now, why is that? It's so bizarre. Yeah, I don't know. We'll figure it out, though. I mean, you can hear how good the sound was on that. And if I can get this speaker right here, and then Sheila starts talking, and her pretty voice comes out of that speaker sounding good and nice and strong, and this fantastic mic picks that up, then everybody gets to hear it well. But I haven't gotten there yet. I'm like, trying. I'm trying. All right, y'all. Yeah. Hope you have a great night. Anything else, Patricia?
No.
See you Sunday morning at 10 o'clock Eastern.
Yep.
For worship. And also for Gene, remember that his Bible studies are at 10 a.m. Central and 11 a.m. Eastern on Facebook and on Zoom. That's Gene Martino Jr.
Okay.
And I joined him this morning, and I hope you'll join me next Wednesday.
Okay.
And I'm already in a Bible study that time.
Yeah.
Well, there'll be recordings, I hope, and maybe you can come back and watch them. I think Gene's recording them. Are you not, sir, on your page? Just go to Gene Martino Jr. and you can watch what we do. I was on there this morning, for example.
Okay.
Joined Gene and his new congregation. Bye-bye, everybody.
All right. Y'all take care.
See y'all soon.
Bye-bye.